The following program was funded in part by Toyota, AT&T, Baldwin Richardson Foods, Lincoln Financial Group, Apple, American Airlines. A complete list is available at thehistorymakers.org. Native son, Houston native, lawyer, and public servant. He rose from state legislature to Houston's mayor. His name is Sylvester Turner. The History Makers, the nation's largest African-American video oral history archive, is proud to present A Night with Mayor Sylvester Turner. And now to our host, Mr. Tony Chase.
Ladies and gentlemen, he was born of humble beginnings in the same year as the landmark decision of Brown versus Board of Education. From the University of Houston to Harvard Law School, his life has been committed to social change. When others said he wouldn't or couldn't, he did. And now, my friend is the mayor of Houston, Texas. Tonight, we are here to celebrate a life well lived.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like that river, been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been so hard living, but I ain't afraid to die, 'cause the Lord said he'd meet me somewhere beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know my change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Said I go to the movies and I go downtown, and folks keep telling me, don't you hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. I went to my brother, yeah, and I said, brother, help me, please. But he winded up, hey, knocking me back down on my knees. There been times that I thought couldn't last for long, but right now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know my change is gonna come. Change.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage the Honorable Sylvester Turner. Okay, let me first say, I know a lot of the mayor's family are here. If you would stand up and raise your hand, that'd be nice. Mr. Mayor, we're all gathered here tonight to hear your story, and hopefully by the conclusion of this evening, you'll all agree that we'll have a special insight into this very special person. Let's take a look.
For people coming on Acres Home, there has always been a tremendous amount of community pride. Black-owned businesses, no better barbecue than in Acres Home. The music, the band.
It was a community that had the teachers. Some of my teachers lived in that community, and a whole lot of folk who worked at the post office, because that was the job. So it was a total community.
Wasn't a lot for African Americans to do in Chapel Hill other than be on the farm, or if you were in school, play sports. My mom, grew up on the farm there in Chapel Hill. My mom picked cotton. My dad is also from Chapel Hill. My dad was a quieter personality, but a strong personality. My mom, very independent, very strong-willed, strong, positive role models, Math, sciences, I liked. I enjoyed the competition.
Everything else in Houston basically was no problem. We didn't have all the riots and all of the physical conflict that they had in other parts of the country. So Houston just integrated everything but the schools.
We're on a bus. We're being driven 18 miles from our homes. It was like two worlds meeting each other for the first time. And there were a lot of fights. It did calm down. And then we kind of gradually move forward.
Yes, so that our experience in government is comparable. Secondly, I think the question is, what are the programs that we advocate?
Just as soon as high school came around and the debate program, and I saw the podium, I gravitated to the podium. Was the district debate champ, my partner and I, at Command for 4 years, president of the student body, and ended up graduating at the top of the class. I debated for 2 years, then I got involved with the Black Student Union, and then I got involved with the Student Association, politics. Well, through the Black Student Union, they then pushed me to be Speaker of the Student Association. 2 political science professors that were very supportive. They said, Sylvester, if you got the opportunity to go to Harvard, especially as an African American, you really need to take advantage of it.
You get into the best law school in the country and you should go. It's an opportunity that most people would die for, and you're smart enough to do it, and you should do it.
I remember distinctly sitting in class, and people would raise their hands and they'd get called on, and they'd give these answers, and I would think, how did you think of that? I mean, I didn't think of that.
They talked about changing the world, and I like that.
My research says that when your mother was pregnant with you, she drove to Garden Park City, where you began your life. Can you tell us about life in the Turner household?
It was busy. There were a lot of us. 9 kids, mom and dad, Acres Home, 3005 Starlings in Garden City Park, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, 1 kitchen. You learn how to get up early, get in the restroom first. But it was fun. I mean, it was good. The reality is that none of us knew we were poor until people told us we were, And I think that applies to a lot of folk. It was an excellent place to rear folk. And the good news is that many of those same individuals that I grew up with, that we all grew up with in Garden City Park, we still hang together now. Unfortunately, during the whole bus and integration era, Garden City Elementary Junior High School was shut down by Klein Independent School District.
Tell us about that part of your childhood. You were bused. Take us through that.
Well, number one, at the elementary school, junior high, there were 13 African American teachers. And they focused very heavily in making sure that we were all educated. Many of those school teachers followed us to Klein Independent School District. And so I started Klein Intermediate in the 8th grade. We were bused 18 miles one way, 36 miles a day. And so at the very beginning, you know, the white kids were meeting us for the first time. We were meeting them for the first time. And it's just like when cold air meets hot air. So you had some tension initially, but over the years, things got better. And by the time we were getting ready to graduate, the relationship with the kids, with the students had gotten significantly better. So things did improve, and I did okay at Klein.
You did a little bit better than okay. I understand, again, that you were valedictorian at Klein.
Well, you know, my mom would say, don't start smelling yourself. So you know, I was fortunate. I will give a lot of credit to those 13 black teachers who laid a very strong foundation. Academically, I did fine. The debate program, I did well. So it was a good foundation. In fact, the superintendent at the time, Superintendent Collins, even after I graduated, followed me all the way through University of Houston, Harvard, and even into my legislative career, you know, all the way through.
It sounds to me like a number of the skills that have served you really well were tempered and perhaps initiated during this period. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. You know, you learn how to survive, and people push. I mean, people.
It was a community.
It was a community, and in large part, it still remains a community. And that's one of the reasons why, for me, I've elected to still stay in the same community today, even today. The principal lived in the same neighborhood. The school teachers lived in the same neighborhood. The preachers lived in the same neighborhood. So you couldn't help but get motivated because you're looking at people who are doing well. So now it's my turn. I'll give you a case in point, an example that really resonates with me. There's an apartment complex right in front in my house, and the kids from the apartment complex had knocked out the boards, and they would come into the subdivision and walk down the street. And I was out in the yard on Saturday morning, about 7 young black kids walking down the street. And they get close enough, and they said, he lives there. And the other guy said, no, he don't know that, man, that's here. So when they get close enough, a young guy said, say, dude, what's your name? True, it's true. He said, what's your name? So I said, who's asking? So he said, what's your name? And I said, Sylvester Turner. And then he turned to the other, he said, I told you he lives over here. I told you. And then talked with him for about 30, 40 minutes. We talked, asked him how he was doing in school, and then they walked right on. So for me, if it just made a difference in one of that 7 or 8 that was in that group, then that's worthwhile. But just like I was motivated by the principal, the teachers, the pastor, the businessman in the community, from my vantage point, and now it's my turn.
Tell us this. You could have gone anywhere, to college. You chose to go to the University of Houston.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, number one, that's a place I could afford. Even though I graduated valedictorian from Klein, I did not get that many scholarship opportunities. The counselors didn't really go out of their way, okay? Secondly, University of Houston had an outstanding debate program. They were ranked, nationally, and I done well in high school, and so went to University of Houston, stayed on the campus for a couple of years. It was at University of Houston where I learned how to drive, man. No, true story. Turtles, my dad, the car that my dad had, 1958 Buick, it died after he died. My dad died in 68, the car died in 69. And after that we caught the bus. And so I never learned how to drive until I got to the campus. And the University of Houston had a major national debate tournament. And Dr. Ben Henderson was the debate coach at the University of Houston. And he comes up to me and he said, Sylvester, I've got a team coming from Chicago, University of Chicago, and I need you to go to the airport and pick them up. And he handed me his keys and he walked away. And I looked at the keys and I looked at his car. I had to figure out how to turn that thing on. And I said, Lord, it's you and me. And I zagged all the way to the airport, and I made it, and I picked them up. 4 white guys, too. And 3 of them got in the back, 1 got in the front with me, and I took off, and they were just talking. And all of a sudden, it went quiet. So the guy in the front seat said, say, man, how long you been driving? And I said to him, I just started. So he said, no lie. So he said, you won't want us to drive? I said, no, man, I got this. I said, I got this. I zigzagged all the way back. We got on the campus. I said, we are here. So the guy said, don't pick nobody else up.
One more question on this part of your life. You finally left Houston, come to Harvard Law School. Tell us about that decision.
I initially was going to go to University of Texas. I knew I wanted to practice law in Texas. I had accepted to go to University of Texas. I had my roommate, Frank Medina from University of Houston, and then 2 professors from University of Houston, Professor Rogers and Professor Karp. When they found out I had turned down Harvard, took me to lunch and asked me why. And I told them, I ain't never been to Harvard. I know about Austin. They said, look, you've been debating on campus. Why don't you go to the library and read up on Harvard? And I did. Changed my mind. I called the university. I said, can I still come? They said, yeah, but we don't have any dormitory space, and financial aid package may be a little different. And so I said, okay, I'm coming. And my mom and brothers and sisters packed up what I needed in a Foot Locker, took me to the airport, gave me a one-way ticket, and wished me well. And I went to Harvard sight unseen, and I knew 2 people. One was the Diane Escobedo, who was over the women's student movement at the University of Houston. She had married this guy at Harvard, and they met me at the airport on the subway, and I stayed with them for 2 to 3 weeks until found me a place and a roommate. But that's literally how I got there. I needed my mom to sign the loan papers, and I just gave her a pen and said, sign. And she said, where am I signing, Sylvester? I just said, these are just some papers that I need. And she said, well, tell me what I'm signing. Tell me what is it? Because she said, I'm not going to law school, you going. So why do I have to say? So I told her loan papers, and I told her the amount. And my mama was a Christian woman. But she went acres home. I said, Lord, where did those words come from? We need to pray. But I kept at it, and when she finally signed the papers, and the rest is history.
Let's take a look.
They said at the end of that first summer, my first year, Sylvester, we're extending your permanent offer now. And I still had 2 years law school to go.
The telephone rang, and it was Alexander Haig who was on the telephone. He was chief of staff at that time.
And I met him on an elevator at the law firm when I was clerking. In my mind, I was, damn, Turner, you come a long way. I was a trial attorney, defense trial attorney, representing a lot of insurance companies, a lot of corporate entities. I enjoyed it, but it never was going to say Fulbright, Jaworski, and Turner. I've always had the desire of having something of my own. I wanted something that would afford me the flexibility where I could be the lawyer, and also if I wanted to engage in the political arena, I could do that. And then I ran into a woman who was a political stalwart, and she came up to me and she said, I am telling people you are running for the state legislature. And she said, you can win this. So I ran. I have the privilege of representing a district that includes areas in which I was born and reared and still live. So you can't get too much better than that. I represented Janet Little. She was an employee at Phillips Petroleum. And her mom calls me And she says, my daughter has been seriously burned. I met with them and signed on, and had a very favorable outcome. It was the first time the Republicans took over the Texas House. We elected our first Republican speaker in 2003, and ironically, he chose me to be the Speaker Pro Tem, the second highest ranking position in the Texas House. I passed a bill to provide more insurance for our kids on the Children's Health Insurance Program. And you're talking about the spirit of bipartisanship. Yeah, it worked. You can't sacrifice the good for the perfect. It's not perfect, but it's a good step forward for the state. You got to stay in the battle. You have to stay engaged. It's a continuous battle. Can't take a break. The people don't send me to Austin to say to them, I'm sorry, I cannot help you because the numbers are not here. They want me to find a way to be effective.
I want to stay on Harvard Law School a little bit more, ask you another question or so. After that first year, we were the 600 or so 1Ls. We were the two black kids from Houston,
right,
which makes you bond a little faster than you otherwise
I think we
might.
were the only two.
I think we were the only two.
Yeah.
Tell us about your experience at Harvard and how that has equipped you for the balance of your career.
We saw the world from a different perspective. The emphasis was the fact that you literally could change the world, regardless of where you come from, that you had the means and the capability of changing the world. And so it helped to broaden my perspective. I'll never forget, though, when I got on to Harvard, I was carrying my lunch to the campus. I had my little paper bag because, my money was a little tight. And so, when I got to the campus at Hawkins, the Commons, nobody else was carrying their lunch. So I went to financial aid. I told Miss Ruiz, who was over financial aid, I said, Miss Ruiz, this is not a good experience for me. I said, Miss Ruiz, none of these students are carrying their lunch on this campus. So she said, well, we do want it to be a good experience for you, Sylvester. I said, well, all I can tell you, they go to lunch, and I'm carrying mine. And so she said, well, I think we can help you out here. So I said, well, ma'am, please help me out. So she said, well, I'm gonna add a little bit more to your account and just check it tomorrow. And I said, hey, Lord, please let this day pass very quickly. So I checked that account, I saw that account, I said, thank you, Lord. And I was going to lunch every day. 3 years later, when I got ready to graduate, we did that exit interview, and I saw Miss Ruiz, and she handed me that sheet of paper. I said, oh, no, Ms. Ruiz. I said, I didn't eat this much. Oh, Lord.
I can testify, he was in Harvard a lot. He was. So in 1980, after our first year at Harvard Law School, you and I both came back to work for the summer for Fulbright and Jaworski.
And that was life-changing. They interviewed us up there.
It was a big deal.
It was a big deal. And the question that I asked those who were interviewing at Fulbright and Jaworski, where are you located? And they said that we are located in the Bank of the Southwest building in the heart of downtown. I said, done. Because growing up, that's where I wanted to be. And then starting to work at Fulbright and Jaworski, that was a different experience for me. The exposure, it meant a big difference. Here was a kid that grew up, born and reared in Acres Home. Even though we in the same city, it was like it'd come a long...
Worlds apart.
Yeah, worlds apart. It'd come a long, long way. And that's why I would tell everybody, education is important. It makes a difference. I don't care what anyone says. It's an equalizer. I don't care where you come from. The students that we met at Harvard came from all over. And at the same time, you had to do well because you didn't want to disappoint anyone.
I remember that summer we spent at Fulbright. There weren't very many black lawyers in downtown Houston. It's really special. 3 years later, Mr. Mayor, you You came back to Houston after law school, joined Fulbright, stayed there for a few years, and then took the audacious step of starting your own law firm.
Well, the first thing, after being at the law firm for a few years, I had that political bug, and I ran for the Harris County Commissioner's Court Precinct 1. Got my butt kicked. I got to tell you this, campaigning election day, campaign victory party, the early vote came up. There were 6 people in the race. I was in the 5th position. And my crowd never grew. After about 30 minutes or so, there were only about 2 or 3. So we said, we need to go find where the people are. I got schooled on that one. I got schooled on that one. And then I went back to Fulbright and Jaworski, and the partners said to me, they were very nice. They took me to lunch, and they said, Sylvester, we trust that you've gotten that political bug out of your system. And I just said, I didn't want to lie, so I just, they said, you ready to get back to work? I said, absolutely. But I knew that it wasn't totally gone. And I knew for me, I needed the flexibility and the freedom to pursue my own dreams and aspirations. And then Barry Barnes and Rosemary Morris and some others, we had been talking about forming a firm, and Barry and Rosemary started it in July of 1983, and a few months later, I decided to join them. And then some 32 years later, Barnes and Turner was still downtown, practicing law, one of the partners there. I had 2 loves. I love practicing law. I love that. At the same time, being the public servant from an elected point of view, I love that too. It gave me the freedom to do both.
It's so interesting. Mayor mentions Barry Barnes, who went to Northwestern Law School, Rosemary Morris, who was also with us at Harvard Law School, and their firm was one of the first black firms to office downtown and do sophisticated legal work. Tell us a little bit about your legal career after Fulbright and with Barnes and Turner.
I mean, look, it was a good mix. We all got along very, very well. I would be lying if I said it was rosy at the beginning. I mean, the first 4 or 5 years were rough. We wore the same suit, different shirt, different tie. I was driving a 1980 Skylark Buick. It faded, so it was rough, but we stayed at it. Rosemary decided to go back to Atlanta. Barry and I continued at the firm, and it was in December. We got a call that a wrongful death case that had been lying dormant. The attorney called and said, are y'all interested in trying to settle this case? And his law firm was in Longview. And Barry and I, we were down to 1 credit card between the 2. And we used that credit card to purchase the airline tickets to Dallas, got it in a rental car, and drove to Longview. This was in December. And we were sitting there, and the guy said, attorney said, you want to settle? So we said, of course, we're here to settle if it's a deal that's right. And he offered us, the initial offer was something like $1.5 million. So I said, that is no money. And, you done asked us to come all the way up here. You could have made that offer on the phone. And so the man came back and he said something like, okay, 1.75. And I said, please. And Barry said, can you give us a few minutes? So I said, can you give us a few minutes? Because we at least need to contact the client, So the guy walked out. So Barry says, Don't let your ego get in the way. You know we broke. So I said, man, I said, Barry, trust me, man, trust me, So come back, and he made another offer. I said, Barry, let's just pack up. They playing games, and just pack up. So Barry hit me on the table, and man made another offer, and I said, okay, I think that, give us a little minute and let's think about this, and we accepted. We said, now look, our client, this is Christmas time, and so our client needs some money right now, so if you could just make an initial payment, and then you can pay the rest, but make at least initial payment. So the attorney said, we can do that. And so, okay, fine. And so we got back in the rental car, and when we got around the corner, we pulled over the shoulder of the road, said, thank you, Jesus. Because we were broke. The client was broke and we were broke. But the point is, if you stay in the game, even when it looks rough, keep your interest of your client first. And don't be so quick, even when you're hungry. It will pay off not only for your client, but it'll pay off for you as well.
Okay, so wait a minute, we got more to talk about. So let's talk about that staying in the game, but let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your political career. Now, you mentioned running for commissioner's court. Then you decided to run for the legislature.
Well, Tony, I would tell you, I didn't make that decision to run for the legislature. Beulah Shepard made that decision for me. I was at a reception, and people were coming up to me and saying, "We wish you well," and I had no idea what they were talking about. And then I ran into Beulah Shepard, and she said, Clint Hackney, State Representative Clint Hackney, is not going to run for this seat, and I'm telling people you're running. And I said, Ms. Shepard, I don't have any desire to be a state representative. And she said, son, you don't know what you want anyway. And I ended up looking at it and ended up serving in the legislature for 26 years. Now, I will tell you, it was a district that was 65% white. It had never elected a person of color. And the way we ran it, we sent out the campaign literature, but we didn't put any picture on it. We said Klein, valedictorian, University of Houston, Harvard Law School, Fulbright and Jaworski. True story. And then when we had a forum and I showed up, here I am. But they had fallen in love with the resume, which gave me enough time once I got in the door to sell myself.
This is a part of your career that I think bears particular mention. Your time in the legislature, you have been a Democrat among Republicans, among a lot of Republicans, among a lot of increasingly conservative Republicans over those 27 years. And yet you were still extremely effective. Appropriations Committee, Judiciary, Chair of the Black Caucus, voted most effective legislator many times by Texas Monthly Magazine. Talk to me about that.
I think you and I and many, if not most folk in this audience, have learned that relationships matter. What I've discovered in the legislative process, it's easy to vote against someone that you don't know. It's hard to vote against a friend. In the legislature, if there's somebody up there talking and carrying a bill and that person is a friend, I am more inclined to listen, and I'm more inclined to try to figure out how we can make it work. And I'm a firm believer that regardless of what we look like, where we come from, we have more things in common than not, if we take the time to get to know one another.
But relationships not notwithstanding, please explain to me how you became Speaker Pro Tem of a Republican House.
Well, in that one, I'll never forget Tom Craddock, who was a conservative Republican. He came to Houston to the law firm, visited with me, and asked me for my support. And I asked him, why would you come and ask me for my support? And what he said to me, he said, look, I think your wings are big and strong enough that if you support me, other Democrats might be inclined to do the same. After he won and became Speaker, I was in his office, and he asked me, he said, Sylvester, what committee do you want to chair? And I said to him what I said to the Democratic Speaker. I'm only interested in chairing one of three committees: appropriations, state affairs, or calendars. I already got all three. I'm sitting on all three. So you haven't given me anything that I don't already have. So he said, well, what else do you want? And I said to him, I want you to make me the #1 person under you. Name me your Speaker Pro Tem. He said, oh. he says, Sylvester, the Republicans just took over the House. I don't think I can do that. And I said, well, then let me tell you what you told me in Houston at my law firm. You said to me that my support was important and that my wings were strong and broad enough. And I'm looking at you and I'm saying to you, if my support was good enough for you then what I'm asking for is good enough for me now. So he said, let me think about it. And I said, okay. And a few days later, he called me in and he said, look, I'm gonna do it, but don't tell anybody right now. I said, I'm not gonna tell anybody as long as you don't change your mind. And on the day that the committee assignments were given, of course, the Speaker Pro Tem was the first one that he named, and he named me Speaker Pro Tem. And that's exactly how that happened.
I want to talk about your becoming mayor. Let's take a look.
Houston is a very different city, and being a strong mayor, it changes depending on who the mayor is.
Thought the timing was right for me. Of course, the poll was coming out, and now saying that I can win it. And then 7 days out, the television station ran a story trying to tie me to an insurance scandal.
What role did Houston mayoral candidate Sylvester Turner play in this tale of multi-million-dollar fraud? We've been investigating Turner's role.
And can you imagine, the leading television station, news, leading that story out 7 days before the election? It was a bombshell. There have been times when my own faith has been challenged, but at the same time, you have to be able to weather the storm. Life is not fair.
We don't need a city of haves and have-nots. We don't need a city where one side is better than the other. We need a city that represents every single person that exists in this city. This city has always been a city of opportunity, that if you dare to dream big, big things can happen. Today is a very special day for the city of Houston. This monument stands as a marker that no matter how smart you may think you are, no matter how gifted you may be, and no matter what contribution you may have made, we are standing on the foundation and the shoulders of people who have sacrificed to get us where we are today. If we do it together, together we can do great things. And the best for Houston is yet to come.
I know I speak for everyone in this audience when I say, Mr. Mayor, that we are so very, very proud that you are our mayor.
Thanks.
But before we get there, now, take us back to the first run.
I was on the floor of the Texas House in 91, and we was talking about running for mayor, and toyed with the idea. I didn't know what it meant to take on the powers that be. We just thought that it was this was the moment, this was the time. There were only 3 people in the race, and at the very beginning, very few people gave us a chance.
I remember that final week before the election, you were ahead in the polls. Seemed like it was all said and done, and then it all fell apart. Take us through that. Maybe painful, but take us through.
You know, 7 days before that election, the vote in the runoff, look, I could taste that thing, man. I mean, we had started, people had given us a chance, but I'll never forget one of my key consultants. We were sitting down talking at the campaign headquarters, and he said, Sylvester, I have 2 things to say, good and one bad. And I said, well, tell me the good first. And he said, well, the good thing is that for the first time in this election, this campaign cycle, people are now saying you can win. I said, okay, tell me the bad. He said, Sylvester, for the first time in this campaign season, people are now saying you can win. He said, before, people didn't give you a shot, so there was no reason to pick on you then. Now people believe you can win, and you're on the verge of winning. So he said, young man, tighten your seatbelt. It's going to be a rough ride. 7 days out, 7 days literally, is when things unravel. And of course, the story on the station was hard hitting. It was like it pulled the rug from underneath, and the momentum stopped. 40%, according to our polls at the time, 40% of the white community in the city of Houston were supporting me. You know, but once that story aired, it was like the bond that had not yet sealed was divided. And by the time we responded and was starting to come back, it just wasn't enough time. The clock ran out, and we fell short. It was another lesson that life is not always fair, but you have to learn how to navigate through it.
Something's occurred to me looking back at that effort against Bob Lanier. Notwithstanding the pain of that one, it seems to me that one could effectively argue that you were meant to be mayor of Houston now.
Well, you know, in '91, I think if I'd been elected, I think I would have been a good mayor. When I ran in 2003, and you know, I didn't just get right back in it. I waited 12, 13 years. I said, you know, I'm a praying man. I said, Lord, I'm not going to rush it when you tell me to run again. If you should tell me, I'm going to do it. So I thought in 2003, I thought he told me to run. And I ran. There were 3 people in the race, and I came in number 3. I said, oh, Lord, you know, it must have been the wrong number. So, but you know, 91, I wasn't mad in 91. In 2003, it was the 2003 race that got to me. It was 2003. And I'll never forget, I was after the election in 2003, and I went to a pastor's funeral. Church was packed. And I got up to speak, and the crowd just stood up, and they were clapping. I mean, they were just clapping. And while I was speaking, I said, now look at these folk here clapping. Probably half of them didn't vote. And so I got in my car, and I said, now Lord, now what type of game are you playing with me? Because I would not have run if I didn't think I should have. So I had to get my head right in 2003. In fact, it was in 2003 when I went to the Bahamas. I was on the beach and on a Sunday, and I knew I needed to be in somebody's church. And so I went to my hotel room dressed, and I got in the cab and said, take me to somebody's church. I don't care where you take me. And I went to this church, and the pastor came out, and he said, this morning I want to speak on the subject, following God's will and not getting what you want. And then he said, I want to tag it, but if you keep on going, in due time, he'll give you more than what you asked for. Okay? And it was that message that just rearranged stuff for me, got my mind right, and came back, returned to the legislature, and said, okay, maybe that was what I wanted, but not what God wanted for me. So let me get my mind right. And this time when I ran, I wasn't intending to run. I mean, I wasn't planning on running. My stay in the legislature was good, and I thought I was doing some good things for the people that had entrusted the position with me. And then I decided, after being there for 26 years, that it was my time to wave goodbye. Not because I didn't love it, not because I wasn't effective anymore, but I said I was going to take the words of a speech teacher that I had in the 8th grade who said, learn to cut off the speech when people still want to hear more. And I decided that for the legislature, I wanted to write my own final chapter. And so I went back to Acres Home, and I had a community leadership meeting, and I told them I am not running. And Miss Ruby Mosley, a little bitty woman, raised her hand and said, Representative, you saying you're not gonna run anymore? And I said, no ma'am. You don't like it? I said, no, I'm not saying that, Miss Mosley, but it's somebody else's turn. The seat is not mine. And let me step away while I can still help somebody else. And so Miss Mosley said to me, she said, young man, she said, now if you're telling me you're gonna park your car because there's no fuel in the tank, Miss Mosley will understand. But if you're gonna park your car and God still got some fuel in your tank, Miss Mosley will not understand. So she said, I'm not telling you to stay in the legislature. But she said, Sylvester, you find some place else where you can be of service. And literally 2 weeks after that conversation, my pastor and 7 other ministers who asked me to go to lunch at Willie G's. And when I walked in, they said, Sly, we think this is your moment. And I said, my moment for what? They said, we think this is your moment to run. I said, pastors, I've been there, done that. And then Rafferty West said to me, but Sly, maybe you've been on your time. Maybe this is God's time. So you need to think about that.
It's powerful stuff. So December 2015, you are in a nail biter.
Yeah.
With this fella, Bill King.
We don't call his name.
Okay.
It was a very close race. It was a tough campaign. It was a tough race.
By the time you get to be mayor, the city's broke.
Yeah, the city was $160 million short. But what I will say to you, you asked a question before about, maybe this is the right time.
Right.
91, 2003, no. This was a good moment. More seasoned, more prepared. On the Appropriations Committee, 21 of my 26 years in the legislature. Been on the Finance Committee, Conference Committee, writing the budget in good times, and then in very lean times. So now I come to the city of Houston, and its budget is not nearly as the size of the states. The same things that I learned and utilized in the legislature could apply here. And so it's about knowing the processes, understanding the systems, being able to drill down into the budget. We got it done a month earlier than normal, and one of the few times in Houston history, a budget that was unanimously approved by the city council. Done. I give a lot of credit. I mean, when you grow up and you don't have much, you make something out of what you don't have. We all grew up in times when the budget was lean. But we learned how to make it through. And I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat, 1 + 1 still equals 2. I don't care how you look at it. Now we tackle the pension issue. And it's an issue that has been around the city for a long, long time. $7.8 billion short. But just like we tackled the budget collectively, the employee groups, police, fire, municipal workers, for the first time, have said yes to the plan. City Council, first time, 16-1, said yes to the plan. And for the first time, the business community have said yes to the plan. With the legislature coming up, now we'll go to Austin together and we'll recommend to the legislature that they adopt Houston's plan that will solve our pension problems, not just on the short term, but on the long term. And I said when I came into office, I would not kick anything down the road. We either go big or we go home. And so I'm very proud of what we've been able to do together. It's been a collective effort, and I want to thank every single employee for them being willing to say, Mayor, you have said shared sacrifice, and we are prepared to sacrifice for the greater good of the city. The only thing, as one employee said to me, Mayor, you are asking us to adjust our benefits. What I ask you in return, if we adjust our benefits, that you not forget about us when this city does better. And the best days for this city are yet to come. That's my commitment to the people in this city. The fact is, we're all in this arena together. And I think it's an important statement for us to make to the rest of the country, quite frankly, to the rest of the world, that in this city, we get things done. And you don't take a whole lot of time in order to get it done. So I'm proud of where we are, but I give a lot of credit to the members of City Council, the employees, the business community, and others who have joined with me to make it happen.
Mayor, I want to thank you for a great interview. It's how much you care for this city and love this city that makes us love you so much. And now we'll have a song.
People get ready, and there's a train coming. You don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesel humming. You don't need no tickets, you just thank the Lord. Yeah. People get ready, there's a train to Jordan. It's picking up passengers from coast to coast. Faith is the key, open the doors and board them. There's a room for everyone among those who love the most. Yeah. And I'm so mighty, mighty glad about it. Hey. There is no room for the hopeless sinner who would hurt all mankind just to save his own. Pity on those whose chances grow thinner, for there's no hiding place from the kingdom's throne, yes. So people get ready, there's a train coming. You don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesel humming. You don't need no ticket. I say you don't need no ticket. I say you don't need no ticket. You just thank the Lord. Hallelujah. You see, we're just waiting on the world to change. Said we're waiting on the world to change. So people get ready, there's a train coming. You don't need just thank the Lord. Hallelujah.
Thank you so very much. Tonight has been an honor. The Honorable Sylvester Turner.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, man.
For more information or to order your own copy of A Night with Mayor Sylvester Turner, please visit thehistorymakers.org or call 866-914-1900. That's 866-914-1900. The preceding program was funded in part by Toyota, AT&T, Baldwin Richardson Foods, Lincoln Financial Group, Apple, American Airlines. A complete list is available at thehistorymakers.org.